you to win the National Hill Climb Championship tomorrow?
If I win on Winnats, probably mean more than the most to me, just because the progress over the last month over climbs as short as this one has been quite rapid, and I feel like Winnats is the pinnacle of all of that, and then to take the win on a climb as short as could be 3 or 4 minutes means that I'm better than I expected over 3 minutes and 12 minutes. And a lot of people probably won't know that I've won Hato, but...
Have I? You've won!
Has he got it?
Yes! What a hero!
How does it feel, Mr. British Hill Climb Champ?
Shut up!
What's this hat? What's
Watch the previous videos!
Link up there.
The hill climbing scene in the UK is like... I don't think there's a scene like it in the world, really, where they're basically just a dedicated time frame at the end of every season where in September, October, there's a lot of these uphill time trials, which in effect that's what they are. And the community is quite strong, covers a lot of age groups. I haven't been hill climbing long. Probably 2018 was my first proper year when I got a taste of it. I realised like just how big it was, especially when you travel up to the north of England. You know, we're in the Peak District now. There's hills around every corner. You could almost, we were saying on the ride today, you could have a hill climb on almost any hill around you. But some events have been around for a long, long time, so they become very prestigious. And lots of riders will travel. Like, longest I've travelled to get to one this year has been 6.5, 7 hours. Yeah, we travel for actually very little race time. It's well worth the travel when you either get a personal best or you win or you see like friends or something, you know. There's always that connection there in some way, shape or form. My season's gone really well. I would say winning the national championship this time round isn't the overriding goal. It wouldn't define the success of my season. Throughout the year I shift through goals and focuses. It's great because like the thing I tend to be quite good at, which is hill climbing, comes at the end of the year, so I can just sharpen my skills. But I wouldn't know off the top of my head how many I've won. I know that every long hill climb I've entered this year, I've won. Following up his success from last year, Ed Laverack. These hill climbs, it's even harder over the longer ones. They're harder to train for, harder to prepare for, but it's made easier when you show up and you put the effort in. So I think there's been 4 or 5, and then the others, mainly this month in October, the shorter ones, I've still performed. I won last weekend on a short one, but I've not, what I say, dominated like I do usually on the longer ones. I would say this season's already been a success when I compare it to last year, where things were derailed by the pandemic. So this year's already been a success because I've been able to race every weekend virtually for the last 2 months. The success comes from the way I've been able to just go from one thing to the next, like do the 10-minute climbs and then like a month later turn to the shorter climbs. And you have to sacrifice certain things, as lots of people have seen my FTP drop, so that I can, you know, become stronger in other areas or be fresher so I can be stronger in other areas. It was hard to do that because it's almost a 2-month process when I decided that I was going to go all in on training for a 3 to 4 minute effort. It's been a fun process, and it's also been, it's been a rewarding one, I'd say.
When it was announced that it was going to be Winnats Pass for this year, was there any point where you thought, I'll take a season off?
I never think if a climb doesn't suit me, I shouldn't be there. To me, it maybe stems back from like when you start in a cycling club and the way you're kind of brought into the sport potentially. You see an awful lot of like the young riders in the pro peloton now who are very good at everything. Like they're like Alejandro Valverde, but at the age of 20. I think it's because they're just so open-minded about being very good at like, you know, cyclocross and then trying the road and like all these different disciplines. And I think hill climbing within itself has got different disciplines. You know, you can't call doing a hill climb on Great Dun Fell, which would be 20 plus minutes potentially, to, you know, doing Winnats Pass, which is 3 minutes, 3 to 4 minutes, obviously for the winner. So it is almost like a different sport in a sense. It's completely different physiology to be able to do, you know, those short efforts. But when you're at the top of the sport, you always have to find something. There's always a challenge, or you always have to find like that next level. And I think the way I see it is, if there's going to be a day where you're going to be in the best condition of your life, it should be on National Championship Day, or it should be on, you know, the finals of the Olympic Games if you're on the track or something. There needs to be like a pinnacle of your year or your 4-year cycle or whatever. So why not invest all of your eggs in one basket to try and be the best person you can be over whatever's given to you? Just because Winnats Pass is 3 to 4 minutes, means that I can actually like put a lot of effort when I wouldn't normally do into trying to be good at 3 minutes. And then you see what you're capable of then, and you know, you don't have to win, because a lot of what we do often gets pigeonholed into like, well, if you didn't win, you didn't succeed. But there's a big difference between like, you know, doing 470, 480 watts for 3 minutes and then doing 520, and you've gained those in like 2 months of consistent training. Now, you can't tell me that that's not a win for yourself. There's only one person who can win on the day, so what's everybody else going to take away from it? There's no point second place sitting there going, well, I lost. Well, if he's done the ride of his life, how can he be disappointed with it?
Day before. Feeling refreshed?
Yeah. 2 and a bit hour ride. 2 hour ride in the rain.
So the day before we do battle, here is the climb. Off to ride Winnats Pass. First impressions, it's cold, it's wet, and there's a headwind. It's nice to come out on a group ride though the day before. It takes my mind off it, but also allows me to share the experience and have a bit of fun with the gang, the Backpedal community.
A bike wash. What else are we gonna do? I'll wash my bike.
Is this your B-roll dream?
Yeah.
Good old John. Don't even know if he watches. I know lots of people want to know about the bike weight, so for the majority of the season I've been running a bike that weighs about 7, kilos. I can hear the gasps at the back of the room. But the most for the last 2 weeks it's been a smidge under, and now it's 6.6. I suppose when you think about it, it's not massive, but you know, mentally as well, it's just that little bit more. Local guy Dan has dropped off his wheels for me to use. They save a little bit of weight, not massive, but every little helps. Well, most people, on average, I would say are riding about 5.5 kilogram bikes, and then there's some crazy builds out there. I know Rebecca well, she's riding a 4.6 kilogram. That's a disc brake bike as well. So fair play to get it that light. I know she's had like some proper custom made parts for it. It's not like, you know, it's not everything you can buy off a shelf then. It's been like really dialed to do what she wanted to do. I try to put that out of my head a little bit, because part of me still, it's the only thing you can control to a certain extent is your own performance. Most of the time, sometimes we focus too much on equipment. Your equipment is very reliable, and it can often just work day after day after day. You know, even, you know, the very expensive stuff that tends to wear a lot quicker sometimes. But it's surprising how much emphasis you put on it, and then how much emphasis they put on, some people put on themselves, and how your body sometimes isn't reliable. And you know, if you don't do everything right, then it will be inconsistent. You know, you could have optimized your bike to the nth degree, but you know, if you've mucked up your sleep for the last week, you could be losing 4 or 5 seconds on the day because of that. You know, even though your bike is the best bike in the world, it still matters though. You know, if you're fighting for a podium spot, I say it now because I know people will be saying it the other side of the camera, you can't be throwing away kilos to other competitors. You know, if you're fighting for the top spot, you just can't. You need every piece of advantage, you know, you can get. Well, Recce, I'm having an almost exploded bowl of porridge. I'm gonna drip feed the carbs in today throughout the whole day.
Honey?
Yeah, and a little spoonful of
Black coffee?
brought my no milk, no sugar, no nothing. I'm sweet enough, as I say. I'm also gonna do a bit of research for tomorrow. Wind important. So I'm using a mixture of my windsock and best bike split. So my windsock will give me the wind direction, wind speed, everything else. I'd rather have two things, like compare it. With best bike split, I can kind of, if I could estimate my power to be like say 520, if I increased it to 540, it'll show you like where the biggest percentage gain is. Basically, if I was to do 540 instead of 520 across the whole climb, I'd gain 1.7 seconds in the first 300 meters, but I'd gain 4.5 seconds in the final 500, 400 meters. So it's obviously because that's the steepest section. So that first minute, I should be riding like over 500, but not over 520, and then this basically from there to the top is like 420 or above if I can manage it. So that's what I'm gonna try and do. Doesn't matter about the rain. Lots of people are talking about it, but like you just dress for it, like skinsuit.
Warm. It won't change your
skinsuit in the rain.
Yeah.
I've got a special custom 3D body scanned skinsuit from NoPinz. Very kindly made that just over a week ago. Pretty lightweight material and everything, super lightweight. Most people have heard of NoPinz now, I suppose, used by most World Tour teams. Even the pad is a triathlon pad because it's a little bit lighter, but it's also narrower, so it's great for climbing really. Yeah, it just means I won't warm up as long, because it just means you get wet, like, because I think some people will be warming up on turbos or rollers, and I'll just be warming up on the roller. So I'm going to get wet, but it's better off to stay warm in the car and then warm up last minute. Well, when I say last minute, it's 30 minutes, but it's not like an hour. So my aim tomorrow is to try and do at least 515 watts for 3 minutes. If it's going to take me 3 minutes, 3.5 minutes, it could be, you're talking seconds maybe, you can only estimate so much, but just like I said, if there's going to be one day of the year where you're going to pull something out, it has to be on the day that you call it. And that can be like physically, it can be mentally, it can be a combination of lots of things. But if I'm ever going to do my best ever ride, tomorrow should be the day. And I think, you know, if I come 7th or 5th or 3rd or 1st, if I've executed on my best ever, what I think I can do, you know, I really should be able to do more than what I've done over the last 2 months. I think looking at it with like a clinical head, if I've done 520 watts for 2 minutes up until now, what's to say I can't do it for 3? I know it seems like a long way, but again, coming back to the fact that it's National Championship Day, you should be capable of going that extra. I always go back to when I won on Haytor in 19. A week and a half before, I sat down with a mate of mine and we talked about pacing, and we knew Haytor was going to take like about 12 minutes for the winner. We looked at like everybody else's power data and watts per kilo, and we thought, well, to win we're going to need like 420 watts for 12 minutes. And we sat down and we were like, can you do that? And I thought, well, my personal best for 420 watts is 8 minutes. So can I do it for another 4 minutes? No. When I said, well, if you want to win, it's potentially what you'll have to do. I only actually won by 8 seconds. But if I'd started conservative and not gambled on me being capable of a phenomenal performance way above my capabilities, I wouldn't have won the Nationals, I don't think. The day off, it's finally here.
Slept well?
Very well. Clocks went back tonight, so woke up an hour earlier, and I think I was up at 4:30. I had my first tin of rice pudding, so I've had 2. Savage. Straight out.
Just so used to it.
Oh, I'm gonna fit these arm numbers. That means I can get kicked up here. Save me fumbling around in a car.
Yeah.
140 grams of carbs this morning. I've had my first coffee. We've logistically nailed it, haven't we?
I feel like we've got this sussed logistically. I feel like if anyone's nailed logistics today, it's us. Process driven.
Put the car in a great spot at the bottom of the climb. Climbs up there somewhere. Whoa! Whoa, nearly.
Right, good luck, mate. See you at the top.
Yeah, see you in a bit. Bike's already there. I can get kitted up here, nice and warm, dry, and I'll just psych myself up for 3 minutes of whatever I can sustain. It's hard to believe, really, that like it is the day. Well, it's not hard to believe. I'm very hyped, but it's just hard to believe it.
Within 3 hours.
Yeah, well, in 3 hours we'll be done.
Yeah.
So I just feel like I'm raring to go now. I just want to get on the start line, like empty the tank, and like.
Does your warm up change in this weather?
It only becomes shorter, I would say. Shorter and slightly more intense. I think it matters anyway because it is a little bit cold, and what I'll do is I'll keep my longs on my top and I'll just dump them at the start line. You know, they'll get soaking on the side of the road, but it doesn't matter. Let's do it. Yeah, I just wanna see what I could do. It's like a voyage of discovery today. because you know it's like the peak of everything, so you just wanna get up there and do it rather than sit around and wait. But we're in the best place to sit around and wait. I'd rather be here than sat in a car listening to a radio, tuning in and out with the with the dodgy signal. But yeah, excited. I won't be able to take it in until probably tonight, because
You see photos.
the messages and everything, like, you don't realise how many people have like bought into it or followed along until you get to the day or the day before, and people are just like, you know, good luck, rooting for you tomorrow, you know, bring it home to Wales, and it's like, some of you aren't even Welsh. But like, I just feel like a couple of years ago when I wasn't doing this, I had a very small proportion of support, and now it just feels like every man and his dog, every man, woman and dog is supporting me, and it feels like a massive team effort. No pressure. That's all I have to say about that.
He says that instead of cut.
That's enough of that. And Tom Hanks is just like, he's like the most savage director he's worked at, because you don't know if he's like happy,
Yeah.
because Clint Eastwood just shows no emotion, does he? That's brilliant. Yeah, that's enough of that.
What is your confidence level for tomorrow?
I don't feel ahead of tomorrow's race. I don't feel as nervous or as if I have any pressure or as much pressure as I did in 2019. I think I put a lot of pressure on myself because I knew it suited me. I knew I'd come off the back of the Tour of Britain. I had great road form, and I knew that like equipment matters. We always talk about hill climbing and weight and power to weight. Equipment matters, weight matters. At the end of the day, it's a time trial uphill, and the fastest average speed goes to the person who wins. I knew that it's not necessarily a case of like over the longer ones you can get away with like your equipment being a kilo or two heavier than everybody else's, because you've got the engine to back it up. The shorter ones, the steeper ones, Winnats Pass, you have to be on par with everybody else equipment wise, so that you can in effect not give yourself a handicap of, you know, as soon as you get on that start line, you know you've got to accelerate 1 to 2 kilos of weight more than everybody else. But saying that, I feel like the build up and everything and documenting it, it's taken like not so much the pressure off, but it just doesn't feel like it's me anymore. Like I said to you like the other day about like, it's not, when I feel like lots of people are involved, I feel like not that we share the stress or the build up. Well, we do share the build up, because, you know, when I'm on that start line tomorrow, I know people are going to be sat at home on their sofas looking at the clock, and they'll be like, Ed's about to start his run on Winnats. But the way people are involved, it's not like a me thing. It just used to be like myself and Charlie. It just used to be 2 of us. Now there's like 5 of us here, but there's also like people on the climb tomorrow who are part of the Backpedal community, and it's like there's far more of us now.
2019 was a solo sport, and 2021 is a team sport.
That's what it feels like. Yeah, people aren't looking at me as much for this nationals, but
How does that make you feel? When you're sort of out of the top 3 or 4, oh, you got to watch this person, and all the comments on social media. And
the whole kind of prediction thing for nationals always gets me a little bit, because I don't quite understand. I suppose it's the same in any sports. You just go off of trends, and those that are winning or those that are performing, well, yeah, you back them. But I think, like, Nationals Day, anything can happen. You can pull the effort out of the bag that most people would have said, oh, he's only capable of 8.3 for 3 minutes, and all of a sudden he comes up with 8.7. And it's nothing unusual. Well, it is actually. You know, if people follow my YouTube channel, they realise it's not unusual. It happens at all levels of elite sport, where people have put time and effort into preparation and it all goes down to one day. You can be capable of doing something. So I think it's not so much like pressure off me because I'm not labelled as one of the favourites. I think it's more a case of you shouldn't point at anyone who's a favourite, because nobody is. It's almost like the first race of the season, where it doesn't matter how many races you've won, it doesn't matter how many times you've been undefeated, you could lose tomorrow. Because the irony is, the more successful you are, potentially the more complacent you come. But again, anything can happen on Nationals Day.
Wow. Wow. My FTP is 304. Wow, it's the lowest it's ever been in my life. The lowest it's ever been in my life. Thank you for watching. I'm standing up because I'm getting everything out, guys. Don't teach me to suck eggs. You can dislike the video if you want, I don't care. If you want to see how it's done tomorrow, you can tune in for the 20-minute test. A lot of you are tuning out already. Let me tell you something.
Going back to January this year, your FTP was an all-time, not an all-time low, but it was normal.
I had a normal FTP.
Yeah.
Funny enough, it was technically an all-time low. I'd never recorded an FTP lower than what it was January this year. I think the lowest I'd ever recorded in 2013 when I first had a power meter was 313 watts, and I think I did 305. A week later I added 7 watts. Yes! 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 And people started to say, he's adding 7 watts on 1 watt every day on his comeback, but no, it didn't quite work. Although it did take a while. I think it was probably May or June where I think I started to feel like I was back to, you know, my old self. My recovery from, for people who don't know, when I came down with the virus in November, December, I was very, I guess you can call it very professional in the way I dealt with it. I'm not the type of person to train through a cold, so there was no way I was the type of person to train through, you know, the virus, but I certainly was worried about like what shape I'd be in come January. When I did test, I was kind of half disappointed, half I can get this back.
Let me tell you something. It's going to be so cool trying to get back to full fitness and doing 7 watt per kilo for 20 minutes. I'm going to throw that in now because there's so many of you who are new here listening. That's right, you better subscribe because I'm doing 7 watt per kilo for 20 minutes this year.
But it's a long way to go from potentially I was at 385 watt FTP in October, and then come January I was at 305. You know, most people in the community would have dropped me if we were to do any sort of intensity back then. But yeah, slowly and steadily built up, and then I'd say it's been a progression the whole time to now, really. It's funny, it seems like such a long time ago, and that's something that a lot of people forget. Like, it can take a long time to build back, but actually it's not that long at all. Obviously people say like a break does you really good. A part of you always thinks like if it wasn't for that then I'd be even stronger now, but there's all these other factors like your mindset and things like that. So, you know, I was chomping at the bit come January to get going, but the temptation was to do too much too soon. Not that anything was happening anyway until, you know, middle of the year. Just so happened that I had a bunch of long time trials that I entered in like May and June, so they just really helped that stepping stone the whole time. Like what I'm doing now is the equivalent of what the best in the country are doing. So I can't see me being any stronger, you know, if I'd not, you know, came down with the virus and subsequently kept on training. Well, not kept on training, but maybe still taking a break, but not, because thing is, you could take a break if you're ill. So if you're ill and you take a week off, technically you haven't taken a week off the bike because your body's still fighting something. It's still inflammation. So you'd almost have to add another week onto it. And that's kind of what I did with the virus. Not only did I take the time off when I had it, I took the time off just before it and just after it, just to make sure that I'd actually fully recovered. What do they say? Discipline equals freedom. Who wrote that book? Well, you often see that with the most successful people. The discipline to train, discipline, particularly the last 2 months, to like achieve and maintain race weight or hill climbing weight. Just see it through when, you know, you have that inevitable bad day or bad race, which, yeah, I think a couple of weeks ago at the Rake, people thought I did have a bad day. I came 14th. It's very rare that I finish outside the top 10. It's rare to finish outside the top 3. And yeah, there were some confused faces, and I had to explain basically that I rode out of my skin and I did an all-time power PB, so I couldn't have asked for more. And the difference between finishing 14th and finishing 3rd was 9 seconds. That's going to be the same on Winnats. So to me, it was one of my best rides.
I'm actually like really happy on my ride. Position wise, I think I finished about 15th.
If I had a limited budget, there's always things you can optimize. I was thinking about this yesterday. I was thinking about, like, you know, motorhome. I was thinking about, you know, you say training camps probably don't necessarily matter so much in the British summer, but definitely in the winter. Even if you can escape for 10 days, because you can pretty much ride for 8 or 9 of those 10 days. I'm at the peak of my physical condition, and there's nothing else I can do with that unless, you know, people say, oh, you should go to altitude, or you should get altitude tent, or, you know, these small things that make like 0.5% difference. I've always been the type of person to like say, well, the 0.5% differences matter, but you need to do the 5% things that actually make the biggest difference as well as you possibly can. You know, it's the boring stuff: eat, sleep, hydrate, train, and make sure that it's fun and sustainable. I know I speak to a lot of the riders who are at the top level in the UK hill climbing, and they always say, you know, they either try to make the best out of what they've got, or what can they find on a bargain, and then try and build like a Frankenstein bike. You know, you see a lot of like the bull bars. You don't see many now of like the fixed wheel or single speed, but you have to have one brake if you're on fixed wheel. But if you're on a geared bike like myself, you have to have 2 working brakes. I know a lot of people say when you take the brakes off, you're going uphill, but it is technically in the rules, just like having your rear light is in the rules, but you don't have to wear a helmet. Wheels make probably the second biggest difference. Biggest difference obviously comes from the skeleton of the bike, which is the frame set. The lighter that is, well, you're off to the best start. The bike I'm racing on for the Nationals is actually not the bike I was supposed to ride. It was loaned to me because the bike that I bought a couple of years ago, I crashed on. So funny we talk about my FTP drop. I then crashed and wrote off my bike and scarred my chin, saved the rest of my face. But yeah, that was like May time or something, and then that was like the lightest frame set, you know, that the manufacturer made. So with all the issues in the bike industry this year, the supply issues, I got loaned an X Team bike. It wasn't like the equivalent of what I was riding. So the X-Team bike had a couple of scuffs on it, as you'd imagine, and it served me well. I've won hill climbs on it. You can actually buy it on eBay for 600 quid at the minute. And I think you don't have to spend a ton of money, but again, if you're racing at the very top, then if you're gonna put yourself through all that discipline, then the bike needs to be put through the same sort of treatment, really. I had a few people come up to me and, well, look at my bike, as a lot of people do on the hill climb scene, and they noticed that I've got a rather strange looking junior gear cassette on the rear wheel. When myself and my mechanic bike back at home were trying to figure out like what sort of gear ratios would I be able to deal with on this climb, bearing in mind it's like 900 meters of 15%, but there are very steep sections near the top. We have a very similar climb back at home, which I bought a 42 wolf tooth chainring to test with a normal cassette, like just a standard Shimano cassette, and I was kind of like in the middle. I'd say I was in like the 23 area of the cassette when I was climbing up this climb full power. Then we were trying to work out chain line, so where would the best place for the chain to be and what sort of cassette would that look like. And there's actually very few cassettes around, and when we did the math and we found this cassette, we thought it was like a typo on the website. An 18 through to 28, 11 speed, so it's one tooth change. Obviously junior racers will be aware that you can get similar cassettes because of gear restrictions. So I bought it just thinking it was probably wrong, and it turned up, and it sure enough was an 18 to 28. Put it on, and I've never ridden a cassette like it. Obviously, when you're riding along on a flat road, you almost feel like you've got to go down a good few gears, and you always end up pretty much being in the 18. But when you're climbing on a really steep hill and you're going full chat, there's a really good sensation of like that connection, and the chain never slips. So if it's like pouring with rain and you're going up a steep climb, a lot of people will complain if they change down and the cassette is obviously a two tooth jump in the sprocket, that little bit of slack in the chain can cause the rear wheel to slip slightly. So we were thinking along the lines of like efficiency and like how much of a difference just having that one tooth jump would make to how it feels, because a lot of it is in the connection with how the bike feels, your mind, your body connection, the bike, it all has to become one. So yeah, a lot of people have been asking me about that, and in fact I've not seen anybody else riding one, which I find bizarre, really.
Do you think we will next year?
Yeah, well, if people...
Depends what happens tomorrow.
Depends what happens tomorrow. I mean, if people can get around the fact that it weighs slightly more than most, then I can't see why you wouldn't ride it for a steep climb. And then you talk about tyres, and all these things can be optimised, and they all change depending on the climb, obviously. Tyre pressures, weather conditions. I might even think about going down wind tunnel route. I've done time trials on my road bike, the same bike that I'm using this weekend, and I've placed in the top 15 in 50-mile actual open time trials, but on my road bike, beating people on full time trial setups. Part of that comes down to like my road racing background, but I think part of it comes down to like just my build, my narrow shoulders and everything else. It has its place in hill climbing, especially going over the longer climbs, which I intend to do next year with travel and stuff, is try and get over to Sacalopper again.
And that's the big one for next year?
I've always said, Sacalopper is like my perfect climb. But there's been those other events, the Taiwan KOM, in Marmot, Haute Route. I definitely want to get back to road racing, the ones that I can pick and choose now, rather than somebody tell me you're racing that. Pack your bags.
The weather, does it bother you tomorrow?
There's lots of talk about the weather. The region that we're in, the Hope Valley region, definitely a place where I don't think weather forecasts can be entirely trusted, just because of, as you can imagine, all the peaks and the valleys around here. very much like Wales, I suppose. It's affected, the weather's affected greatly by the area. I think it's no secret I want the climb to be longer, but obviously the climb can't grow longer than 890 meters, but it can in time if there's a headwind. There's like a 20-mile-an-hour wind forecast tomorrow, well, 15-20 mile an hour, but there's strong gusts forecast. Now obviously people standing on the side of the road cheering, that could alter it. Really depends which way it's going. It looks like it's going to be like a cross tail, but you know, you just got to prepare. I'm going to make 2 plans tonight for tomorrow. 1 if it's a headwind, 2 if it's a tailwind. Pacing strategy. Probably both of them are going to go somewhere along the lines of, if my target wattage is at least 520, I'm going to be starting at 500, 510 for the first minute. And then it really becomes much more plain and simple after that. Flat out. There's not going to be a lot of pacing involved. I think if it's a headwind, my flat out will be a conservative flat out, but it'll still be as hard as I can go, pretty much. If it's a tailwind, nothing's going to be held back. Initially I was thinking about going off really hard, but I've heard evidence to suggest that that would be the slowest way to climb, which is fine by me, because if anything, I'm better at starting off slower and finishing faster. I'm just going to have 2 scenarios, have them down, and then stick to them then, whatever it throws up on the morning.
Obviously you said about people standing on the side of the road. You've got 12,000 YouTube subscribers.
Let's check.
Over 12,000 now. In 2019 you had what, 3,000?
3,000 in 2019?
Maybe? I don't know, I haven't looked.
You might be right actually. I think having, I call them a community, so having people from the Backpedal community, not just there on the day physically, but like virtually as well. We're all connected obviously by our phones nowadays, and you know, Discord channel's got like nearly 500 members on there. They're all sending messages. You know, I've had messages on Strava, Instagram. The reach now just seems to be like way beyond like comprehension. Having people physically on the climb, and even like going for a ride with someone today, like just reinforces that sense of like not doing it alone. Not doing it alone, and knowing that we are kind of all connected, and everyone who's watched, you know, a couple of the videos leading up to this, or you know, even just dabbled in 1 or 2 or watched them all, they've got a sense of like the preparation and the mindset and the setbacks and the wins. You're there, if that makes sense. So like, and when somebody's gonna shout my name on Winnats, it's not, sometimes it's not the same when your support has been brilliant. Someone's there shouting for you because they know, you know, oh, it's Ed coming, you know, seen his name on the start sheet, or you know, what number's this, or this is number 100, you know, we give him a shout. When you know the person on the side of the road, you can recognise their voice, you can recognise like what they're wearing, and I know you're not actually concentrating on it, but you just pick up on these things, especially like, you know, I've raced through massive crowds when I've been road racing, Tour Britain, Tour Yorkshire, like the tours we've done abroad, and the difference it makes is huge. But when you've got people there who actually know you, and you know, their voice almost just carries you to the next point, to the next person, and something tells me I'm going to be a bit emotional tomorrow because it's not even hit me yet, like the nationals. I know I've prepared for it, and I know it's 1 day out, or not even 1 day out, it's like 12 hours out. I feel like on the morning it's going to be like, you know, on the start line there's loads of people here, and you haven't been like hiding behind a cover, like the people all know what you've been doing and what it's taken to get there. You know, win or lose or whatever the result, the the feeling is the same. I can't sit here like I did in 2019 and say like the goal is to perform my best. If my best is winning and I win, great. But if my best is coming third and sharing a podium with two absolute hitters of these short hill climbs, I don't know how I can complain about it. I said about 2 months ago, if I get a top 10, it's the equivalent of a win. I know a lot of people have said, well, you're foolish to say that because you can get a podium. And I'm like, well, we'll see, but that's not, there's the elite performance mindset is a strange one. Like, you've got to set yourself goals, process goals, and yes, the goal can be the British Championships, but the goal doesn't have to be to win, it can be to perform at your very best. I said in 2019 that I would win because I knew that over those climbs, very hard to beat me, even though I was beaten 2 weeks before by a second. But that goes to show that anything can happen on the Nationals. The weather's been hit and miss all day, but this morning it was really rough. I think we knew it was going to be wet and windy. When I got down to the start, I feel like logistically we had everything nailed. Location of vehicles, people on the ground, just like with jackets and stuff. Everything was set up ready. And then my warm-up was like decent. I definitely got warm sat in the car. If it wasn't as bad as it was weather-wise, I probably could have enjoyed a longer warm-up. But you kind of got to make the most of it. If it's going to be a shorter one, you've got to make the most of it. So I did. People even recognising me even when I was dressed as the Michelin tyre man. I think everyone was hiding from the rain, and those that were walking on the side of the road were just wishing me luck. When I finished my warm-up and, got my skin suit on properly and got myself ready to go, put the timing chip on, started to, rain really hard. It's typical it will do it now, when we've got about 10 minutes until the start. Given that we're only off 30 seconds apart, and a lot of what you would call the faster riders were seeding near the end, we were all going to have the same conditions. I timed it well enough so I got there about 5 minutes before, and there was on the grass verge on the side was just loads and loads of people's jackets and rain capes and everything that they'd left there. I had my car keys stuffed down the inside of my skin suit. I knew I only had 3 minutes or so I just stripped off, chucked my stuff to the side. I could see other people with helpers with umbrellas and everything else, and I feel like that's something, if we were to change, we would just have that. Just a small thing like having somebody with an umbrella there. A lad called Mitch, who I know from North Wales, came over and sheltered me for a bit. But I rolled up the start line, a bit of small talk with the timekeepers that
What did you say?
do. Didn't say anything about my timing chip. I just said this looks slippery. They had a mat right on the start line where the electronic sensor would be. When you roll over that, it'll start your timer for your run. And he just told me don't go over it. And I was like, oh no, okay, alright. And so he held me up and he said, I'm your starter, because unlike most hill climbs where you'd have a minute gap and you'd have one person holding you up and the next person comes along and you hold them up, it was 2 tents. So you'd have a left and a right, and I was in the right tent. And you could hear the rain hammering down on this tent, and the guy was holding me up. I said, right, I'm going to count you down from 30. The rider on my left set off. That was his start time. And you just see him take off and you think, starting too hard. But you always think that. You always think there's something wrong with other people's rides. I tried to keep myself in the moment. Told myself that, like, it's not wet. It's 3 minutes. You won't even, like, know it's raining. Timer went down, 5 seconds. And off I went. Initially during the warm-up, I wouldn't have said that I felt amazing. Within the first 30 seconds of the climb, I knew I wasn't completely 100% like I would have been on any other day. Whether that have been the cold, the wet, I know the conditions are the same for everybody, but everybody responds differently to them. It's always difficult to recall during the event your feelings and everything else, because a lot of it is automatic. You're in the zone and you're just doing what you can to get to the top as fast as you can. I knew that the first section, being the flat section, I had to pace myself. I looked down, I was seated the whole time. I was comfortable with what I was doing, but I knew how far it would be once you went around that corner and it went really steep. And that's where everybody was stood. There was loads of people out there. I got out the saddle on the initial kind of steep part to the bottom. There was no wheel slip, and I was told to make sure you let the tyre pressure down because everybody's wheels are slipping. So that's what I did prior to the start, and my tyres were pretty soft. Once I got probably over the halfway mark and the gradient started to go to that 20%, maybe a little bit more, I was almost forced to stay seated. I felt like if I got out the saddle, and when I did, it was almost always like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. You just couldn't, like, if you pressed hard, and granted we were doing close to 500 watts, you just couldn't get the grip. What I've told myself in the car before the race was, like, you're just going to go and do your best ride, get to the finish line as fast as you can. If things start to, like, get messy and they start, like, falling apart, tough, just try and keep riding as hard as you can until you get to the line. Climb from there on was just like a massive slog, and I was in and out the saddle, probably more seated than standing. You can't get all the power out when you're seated. You need to be standing and using your whole body, and you know, your whole body weight to push down on the pedal stroke. Given that we'd ridden it the day before, I didn't expect the finish to be as far away as it was. We came around the final corner and it was like, wow, it's still quite a way to go. So I had to dump down a few gears and made it over. And I have to be honest, like, my initial reaction was...
Next climber coming up towards the line is number 200 and...
Like, I'd emptied the tank, I was done, I'd executed on my plan. Not power-wise, but I'd executed on effort. When I crossed the line and I was hearing people's times being called out, I didn't hear my time. I didn't know what my time was, didn't know how good it was or how bad it was. But inside, I felt a little bit like I could have gone faster. I wasn't on the best of days, but that didn't matter because the process goals were ticked off. Like, I'd done the warm-up, I'd done the nutrition, I'd done the sleep, I'd done everything. So whatever you do on the day then is almost irrelevant if you've got everything right up to that point. So
I got everything out. Tom Bell, new course record. Look at that, 3:01.6 for Tom Bell. He has gone fastest for the High North Performance team. Andy Nicholson 3:11.
Trying to get my breath back. Obviously I had to see Tom when he crossed the line, give him his congratulations. I think that I expected the top 3 to be very close, and then, well, the rest of us were actually fairly close, but we were a little bit further back. It's amazing, like, the guys who I suppose you could say are that much more suited to the shorter climbs, it's amazing how much faster they go, you know, in comparison to everybody else. You know, it's jaw-dropping really when you look at it. Yeah, my overall feelings were a little bit mixed at that point, and it wasn't until I started to walk down the climb, which was an effort in itself, to try and keep warm more than anything. And I was walking past people, some familiar faces, some people, you know, I didn't know, to be honest, but they obviously knew me, and they were saying well done, and calling me by my name, rather than just saying well done because you're a rider descending. That was like quite like not emotional, but you just don't understand the the size or the reach that you have sometimes until you get into a situation like today at the Nationals. And as I got further down the climb and I bumped into, you know, you guys and the Backpedal group and the Muckle Corner and, you know, the people with the massive signs and the cowbells and the sirens and everything else, it just reinforced like what I said about you're not just there to do a performance all the time. You're there to soak up the atmosphere. You're there to be a part of something that doesn't always come around. I think the last time the Nationals was on this climb was like in the 60s or 70s. And like that's like a once in a lifetime thing sometimes, and I feel like being there was almost, well, being there was as important as pulling up, you know, a performance. But then, like, fast forward to going back to the headquarters, and once I'd kind of warmed up after being a shivering mess for half an hour, I then looked at the results board, and they had live timings as well, which was brilliant. Turned out I was 10th. And I said about 2 months ago, and it's kind of been not a closely guarded secret, but when you set goals, obviously you try to make goals that are achievable, measurable, you know, they have a time frame and everything. And for me, when a Nationals is on a climb, not puts me at a disadvantage, but I know I have to train for it specifically and sacrifice other things. Even when people are telling me, like, don't bother, it doesn't suit you. For me to come 10th was the equivalent of getting a win. And I think, like, I'm so... Well, I'm just chuffed with it. I've taken, like, my body from one place and then completely shifted it. And there's no way I would have got a top 10. Like, if I just trained for long climbs and just, you know, done my usual thing, there's no way I would have got a top 10. So it feels like this time I've had to work extra hard to put things in place for me to be able to perform like that. Because at the end of the day, a couple of months ago, I could have pulled out, you know, really good performance over a 3-minute effort. But it's important to be not just really good at a 3-minute effort, but being consistent at it. And I think, if anything, that's what I've gained over the last, like, two months, really, is that consistency over shorter efforts and shorter climbs, and being able to do it time and time again, rather than just being a one-hit wonder and then not being able to back it up the next week. I've learned a load, and it'd be interesting now to see where things develop from this. It's not just been the last 2 months, it's almost been like a year of like this slow anticipated build, because people know that I do the hill climbs. It's not the only thing I do, but it seems to be something that people enjoy, like, following or watching. I think it's also because, like, we all want to get better going up hills for one reason or another. It might just be to make the ride easier. I just hope that in some way, shape or form, like, the last 2 months has just lit the fire under somebody to just go like, well, come on, like, you know, if something doesn't suit you, tough, go and do it, go and give it a try, you know, see what you come out of it with, because you'll probably surprise yourself, no doubt, and then you can use it the next year, or you can always, it's always there for you to come back to. And I was far more calm and at peace with the effort today, or the build up to it, than the last couple of days and this morning, because of the support that I've had. And thankfully I don't have phone signal here at the minute, so like my phone would be going like bananas at the minute. And I just really appreciate the time people take to type a message or to say like good luck, or like I hope you smash it, you know. It's just time out of their day to do that, and hopefully, because I provide something that they can relate to or they can take from, then, you know, I mean, that's the main goal at the end of the day. I'm just sharing and documenting the whole process. It's nothing super fancy. That's all I have to say about that. You're good. Yeah, of our new backpedal order. Jeez. You get a 10 line, yeah.
Happy with that?
Yeah.
Cut.
Chop. That's enough of that.